Hey, y'all. Oh my gosh. Welcome to another episode of the Dr. Kiki Ramsey Show. I'm so glad y'all are here with me. Uh, Today, we're going to be getting into a topic that has been requested. Okay. Been having a lot of conversations with a lot of women, and the topic of overthinking has just been very, very prevalent throughout many of our conversations. And so I got a request that I do a show on overthinking and how to really overcome it, how to stop it, how to get mental clarity so that you don't overthink for the rest of your life. Because who wants to do that? We are going to get into it right after this. Hey, y'all. Okay. So if you are joining me live, go ahead and drop your name in the chat and where you are tuning in from. I would love to give you a shout out. Okay. Overthinking. What is it? Why do we do it? And we do it to ourselves all the time. Overthinking is really a process of excessive analyzing. Excessive. Like we continue to analyze, or dwelling on your thoughts, often leading to a lot of stress and indecision. And I know a lot of us, in today's day, we're so busy. We're at work. We're making a cajillion decisions. We come home. We got to make 1,000 decisions. And I see all these posts. On social media about the fact that we have to make so many different decisions in our lives. And but when you overthink everything, then it's times 1,000, right? Like if you have a lot of decisions to make in your life and then you overthink everything, it just becomes a very, very difficult way to actually live our life. And I know a lot of us go into, a decision making process and we're just not sure. Then we ruminate on it and we ask ourselves, are we making the right decision? Is this the best decision? All these things. And it gets to be very difficult. And so I wanted to have this conversation today because I think that for us to be able to thrive in today's economy and just in today's world with so many different things going on, we have to stop overthinking every single thing. And so the question was, is overthinking beneficial? Well, not really. I mean, it could probably have some beneficial ways in the sense of having some aspects that can contribute to like just your thought process. But for the most part, it induces a lot of stress. It induces a lot of stress. When you overthink, you have increased anxiety and stress. I can't tell you how many women I've talked to, and this is Women's History Month, by the way. So happy Women's History Month to us. This is the reason why we're having this conversation, because I need for us to get out of this pattern, this negative pattern that we're doing to ourselves by overthinking everything and getting nothing done. Right. So I really want us to be able to do that. But this gives us increased anxiety. It impairs your ability to make decisions. And y'all know we got a lot of decisions to make. I'm probably to made 1,000 decisions all between the time I woke up and the time that y'all see me on this show. I've made 100 decisions by now. But when you overthink everything, it impairs your ability to make those necessary decisions. And it also negatively impacts your relationships. Have y'all ever seen these memes and these shows, and there's like, what's for dinner? You decide what's for dinner. And the couples are like arguing about what's for dinner because nobody else wants to make another decision. And I've seen a meme that says, please don't make me make one more decision. Just decide what's for dinner. I'll eat whatever. And then when they bring whatever home, we're mad. Isn't that life? Life goes just like that. But it really does affect decisions and relationships, because when one person in a relationship can't make a decision, then it's hard for that couple to then move. Like you can't move, you can't do anything, you can't decide where you're going, what you're doing, because one person may have analysis paralysis, which is what I call it. And so it affects your relationships and it reduces your productivity. Like it literally reduces how productive you are. Because if you ruminate on everything that's going on in your life, it affects how you're able to move. And so overall, you have a very, very, very poor mental health when it comes to overthinking, right? And I can, for the most part, make decisions, but I can remember a lot of times when I'm not making decisions, my to do list grows by the mile. Because what I do is I'll just put it on the to do list and then it never gets done. And then that in itself then causes anxiety. And so, last year, I decided not to have a long to do list. I didn't want a running to do list. Right now, I'm working on getting that to do list down because it is still way too long for me. But what a lot of us do is we can't make a decision about something and we put it on that to do list and we just kind of forget it, and we're like we're gonna get to it. But for me, that causes anxiety. So I need to either do it, remove it, or save it for later. And that's what I've been able to do, which helps me out a whole lot when it comes to that. But it still goes back to overthinking. Like, should I do this? Is this going to be good for me? Do I want to do this? Do I not want to do this? And let me just tell you, not wanting to do something still makes a difference in terms of whether you're overthinking or not. Because when you decide not to do it, you're still overthinking it, right? So I want to give you some stats because y'all know I love when we dig into the research and kind of give you what this really means, and that you're not alone. Because I mean, clearly, if I'm talking about it on the Dr. Kiki Ramsey Show, that means you're not alone. That means thousands upon thousands of people overthink everything. And so here are a couple stats. Research says that 73% of all 25 to 35-year olds chronically overthink. 73%. Is that not astonishing? And this is along with 52% of the people are overthinking ages 45 to 55. So that's a big number. 73% of 25 to 35-year olds overthink, and then 52% of 45 to 55-year olds overthink. It also says that women are significantly more likely than men to fall into overthinking and become immobilized by it. Meaning, we as beautiful women versus men, we tend to overthink a lot of things. And then 57% of women and 43% of men are overthinkers. So if you really think about these statistics, it means that we are really overthinking all these decisions that are happening in our lives. And it can be just hard to live, not alone thrive, right? Because we talk about thriving here. It can be hard to live if you constantly overthink everything in your life. And then another fact that we pulled up was that overthinkers are significantly more likely to abuse drugs or alcohol, and overthinking may push some individuals into to consider an attempt suicide. Y'all, this is real. This is real. I mean, like, overthinkers are more likely to abuse drugs or alcohol, and I can see it, right? Because a lot of times when we have so much on our minds and we can't make decisions about certain things, we tend to want to run to something that may make us feel better. They didn't have this on here, but I can also tend to think that maybe overthinkers can also be overweight. Why? Because I know a lot of us who might not necessarily run to drugs or alcohol, we'll run to sweets. We'll run to food, that feel good food. Like myself, I realized that I emotionally eat sometimes, right? Like when I'm a little stressed, give me some chocolate and we good, right? Like you give me some chocolate and we're amazing. And so I can tend to think that overthinkers are also can be potentially unhealthy a lot of the times, because we can run to sweets and to foods that will comfort us a lot. And so I want you to know if you are an overthinker. Here are some signs for you to recognize that you may be overthinking. You, number one, is you dwell on past events and situations. You can't overcome them. Like if there's something that has happened in your past and you cannot overcome it, you may be an overthinker. Another way is you're second guessing the decisions that you've already made. Like you'll make a decision and maybe at the moment you feel good about the decision, but then that little thing pops up and you're like, wait, what if I didn't make the right decision? What if it was wrong? Right. And y'all know me, I always tell you to make the next best decision. Don't think about the next right decision, because right decision will have you paralyzed. But when you think about what's best for you and you make the next best decision, then that is what I always tell you to do. But if you are second guessing all your decisions, then you might be overthinking. Also, if you replay your mistakes in your mind, if you make a decision and it turns out not to be so great and you make a mistake, you continue to ruminate and you play that mistake over and over and over again, and then you keep rehashing the challenges and uncomfortable conversations that you might have. You fixate on things that you can't control. I, this one is so prevalent to me. I I y'all know I coach. I'm an executive coach, and I have to talk to clients about this one a lot in terms of ruminating on things that you can't control. Y'all, we can't control everything. And so here's the thing, as leaders, as professional women, a lot of times we want to control things. And as a matter of fact, it's in our job title. We are in control of a lot of things. We are bosses, but you cannot control everything. And a lot of times when you ruminate on that, it can be overthinking. And then the last thing I'll think about is you will fixate on the worst case scenario. And so a lot of times when I'm talking to women, I'll ask them, "Oh, okay, so what's the best case scenario?" And th- we're looking at me like a deer in with headlights, right? Because we don't think about the best case scenario. But I'm a positive psychologist, and so my goal and my job is to always help you think about the best case scenario and see the glass half full versus half empty. And I think a lot of times we don't do that in our lives. And it's programming. It's programmed. It's the way we've been programmed, and the media doesn't help us think about the best case scenario. It helps us think about the worst all the time. But if you're doing that, you might be overthinking. And then the last one, this one is funny. You have a running list while you're falling asleep. You're thinking about all the things that you need to do, you need to decide about, you need to accomplish, and you're trying to go to sleep and you got this running list. I've even been guilty of trying to go to sleep. My mind is racing so much. I'm overthinking. And I call it going into the vortex, because I can go into the vortex where I'm overthinking things so much. I have to get up and write myself a note so that I can remember it. It's gotten so bad that I'm like, oh, I don't want to forget this. I need to forget. Like we're just doing too. We're doing too much. You're doing too much, and so I think it's quite interesting when it comes to this overthinking. And so a lot of this is caused by a couple of different things. So if you saw yourself in that list and you did some of those things, you're not alone. And this by far it's not like condemning you in any kind of way. So many people overthink. I overthink sometimes. Um, and so this is just to help us get out of our own way because I know we want to overcome this. And so some of the reasons or causes of overthinking is that you may have anxiety, right? The way this world is set up these days, there's a lot going on to make us anxious, and to make us just to be stressed out a lot more. So you may have anxiety, you may suffer from perfectionism, and we've had I think a whole show on perfectionism and the fact that it doesn't exist and the fact that we shouldn't be striving to be perfect. We should be just striving to be comfortable and content. But so many of us are striving for perfectionism. And then it could be from past trauma, and kind of low self-esteem. A lot of us have a lot of trauma that we've experienced in our lives. It's just a fact. There's so much trauma that we've experienced, and it's been difficult for us. And so, therefore, the overthinking has been from past trauma. And I think I was talking to somebody who was saying to me that the reason why they started overthinking is because their parents always wanted them to make a decision. They always had to defend their decision, that of anything, and so they always then now started overthinking everything. And that caused a past trauma. So I want you all to think about, what do you think your source of overthinking comes from? Because it came from somewhere, right? Another reason is you have low self-esteem or high sensitivity to just things, but it came from somewhere. A lot of it is programming that has happened in our lives. And so you need to sit down and have a little talk with yourself. I always say that a lot of times um we do not sit with ourselves enough to understand and to really know where we're coming from, right? To know where we're coming from. So thank you, Dos Dostun. Thank you for being here live. I appreciate you. So we don't really know where we're coming from, a lot of times, and so we don't know how to sit down and just really kind of analyze our life, our story, and so therefore we don't get a lot of answers. But this is a time for you to sit down, try to analyze so that you can get answers about why you are where you are, especially if you're stuck in a trap of overthinking. So, how do you stop overthinking and get that mental clarity? I'm just going to go over a couple things that I think have always worked for me, have worked for some of my clients as well. And I think they will work for you as well if you fall in this category. Number one, you got to practice some mindfulness. And I was just really talking about it. Mindfulness is really about being present in the moment and not being judgmental about what's happening in that moment, not being judgmental about yourself in that moment either. It's just really being present and understanding and noticing all of your senses. What are things looking like? What do things smell like? What are things, like if you touch something, what does it feel like? That's being present. And I try to be as present as possible, so that I can make decisions that matter for me and for my family, but also I believe in living life to the fullest. And you don't get these moments or these memories back. So it's very important for you to try to live the life and be present in the moment. And so, how do you do that? You can do that through prayer. You can do that through meditation. You can do that through deep breathing exercises, right? Sometimes we just need to take a deep breath. So let's practice it together. Breathe in, hold it, and breathe out. Breathe in, 1, 2, 3, 4. Breathe out, 1, 2, 3, 4. It slows us down. It puts us right where we are so that we can notice what's going on. And then from that place, you can you can make some decisions that will matter to you. Another way is you have to challenge your negative thoughts. This one is so key, right? You have to challenge them and ask yourself, what's the alternative? Is this actually true? Anytime I have a negative thought about myself, I have to challenge that and I have to ask myself, is that honestly true, Kiki? Is that really true? I know I was convinced at one point in my life that I wasn't creative. And I mean, as a matter of fact, I'm probably one of the most creative people I know. I have all these ideas and I love, I'm an idea person. I can run with it. I can get it done as well. But I was like, I'm not that creative. I'm not that creative. But come to find out, I am. But it was a negative thought that I was telling myself, and my overthinking everything that I wanted to do kept me in that paralysis state. And so, if you are like me, you got to really challenge those negative thoughts by asking yourself, "Is this really true?" And we know when we get into this negative thought pattern, we go in, we start ruminating, and we start overthinking every single thing. Did I do that right? Is this good? Is that good? You got to stop and ask yourself and challenge those negative thoughts. And then focus on problem solving. And what I mean by that is instead of ruminating on the problem, focus on what it's going to take for you to overcome the issue, right? A lot of times, some of us just want to vent. We just want to tell our problems to the world. Anybody who will listen, you ready to tell them your problem. My question to you is, okay, and how do you solve that? It's like it's like a snap, it's like a change that you have to make from being in the problem like that and ruminating on the problem to actually solving the problem. You got to break that problem down. And if it's a huge problem, break it down into smaller, more manageable steps, right? A lot you can't eat an elephant with a spoon. What is that? What do they say? I got my metaphors mixed up. But you can't eat an elephant in one sitting, right? You would have to break that thing down, right? You can't. So you need to break a problem down. If it's huge, break it down, but try to solve it. I would only give myself a hot second to ruminate on an issue. When there's an issue in my life, my whole thing is I may be mad, I may be upset, angry, all the things, but I'm going to quickly at some point move to action because there is no need to continue to ruminate on the problem. What good is it doing you? I mean, there are some people who just like to complain, though. I know those people. It's the truth. And if you're that person, okay, you need to recognize you that person and you just want to talk about the problem, but you don't have no intention on solving it. But I think that's a sticky place to live. When we live in just ruminating on the problem versus solving it, I think that's a sticky place to live. So challenge your negative thoughts, focus on solving the problem, practice some mindfulness, and then set boundaries with your thoughts. Oh, that's that B word again, set boundaries. When you notice that you start overthinking, set a specific time limit where you're like, okay, I'm going to dwell on this for a hot second. And then once that time limit is up, you got to redirect yourself to a different place, even if you haven't made a decision on it. You got to redirect yourself to something more positive, something that is not going to have you stressed out. You got to set a boundary because here's what I know. Negative thoughts and those thoughts, those decisions that we have to make in our lives that cause us to overthink, they will set up camp. They'll come, they'll set up camp, and they will take up a lot of mental space. And you don't want it to take up a lot of space, which is the reason why we want to stop overthinking. And so if you do find yourself, or when you do, because you have to notice, You have to notice when you're overthinking. That's number one, because if you don't notice when you're overthinking and you're doing it on autopilot, then that's when things start going downhill and you can't get to where you want to be in life, right? So notice when you're overthinking, but when you do notice it, set a boundary with it and say, okay, I got this challenge or this problem or this decision I need to make. I'm going to dwell on this. I'm going to think about it, but I'm going to get myself to 1 o'clock. And when 1 o'clock hit, I'm done with this. I'm moving on to the next thing on my list or in my life. And then you just do that and you hold yourself accountable. And you might want to get an accountability partner. A lot of times when we are going through certain things like this, you might want to get an accountability partner. That might look like a coach, right? It could look like a therapist, or it could look like a friend who really understands what you're going through, right? It could be in a whole bunch of different forms or fashions, but you probably need somebody to support you that you feel comfortable enough that they are doing a good job in their own life and they don't necessarily suffer with this, but they can understand it from your standpoint, and then they can help you through it, right? They can help you through it. And so then lastly, you have to practice some self-compassion. I always call this grace and mercy. We have to give ourselves grace and mercy. We are so extremely hard on ourselves a lot of times when it comes to just the decisions that we make in our lives, the mistakes that we may make in our lives. We are so, so hard. But when you can be kind to yourself and acknowledge that you're not perfect and that you make mistakes and things might not always go properly, then that is where the magic starts to happen. I don't know how many times I've had to forgive myself and then move on, right? I've had to give myself some compassion and then move on, because treating yourself with that kindness and that love can do wonders for you. It can do wonders for you. So if you are in a category and you're overthinking, these are just a couple of ways that I've been able to help my own self and then my clients overcome them. And I want the same for you, because here's the thing: you are capable of making the decisions that you need for the rest of your life. Like, you are capable of doing it. You've done it before. You can do it now. You're capable. And I know these decisions that you have to make are hard, but I always think about, if it is not killing you or if it hasn't killed you yet, you're going to be okay. Right? If it's something that you've done haven't killed you, killed somebody else or whatever, you're going to be okay. Right? So I think that a lot of times you got to give yourself a lot of slack, because you're doing the best that you can. So when you need to make a new decision or something happens in your life and you don't want to ruminate on it, give yourself the slack to be human. You are a human being, and it's okay. It is okay that you take some time, step back, and let it go. And let it go. So I hope that this show has helped you out, if that's the category that you fall in, like many of us do. We want to be a nation of women who can make these decisions in our life and we can keep it moving, because they are the best decisions for us. And so I want that for you. I'm happy that you tuned in today. Share this with somebody who you think needs it and needs to hear some of these steps to stop overthinking. And if you're a woman and you want this continued support and coaching from me, I invite you to join the Happy Women Lead Academy. If you go to my website at kikiramsey.com, you can find all the information there. It is free to join, and I would love to have you in the community. You all, like I always say, you have the ability to create your own